Okay. Welcome everyone. I hope you had a good rest because it's gonna be tough. Okay, my name is Leandro Guillén, and you can reach me at this address. It's the one I interact with people the most. And I'm a FIWARE coach working at ISDI, which is Institute of Advanced Studies in Madrid. And as I said, I'm a FIWARE coach, and that means that I help people get the most out of FIWARE. And in this particular case, I help you guys with your startups, with your SMEs, in this acceleration program, which is Impact, to adapt FIWARE to your necessities and make use of it. Really good use of it. Now, this is going to be a workshop, so I was hoping that you guys could actually do stuff instead of me just explaining stuff. If that's cool with you guys. I know Marcelo asked this question, but I was in the first row, so I couldn't see it. How many of you are developers or similar? That's actually more than half. Okay. Because my plan, I'm going to tell you what my plan is, and then we can adapt to what you guys want to do. I am actually one of the developers of one of the enablers as well, which is the Orion context broker that allows for context management, which I will go into that. So what we can do, we have roughly a couple hours plus. What we can do is I could go, tell me what you guys want, or what your guys are interested in. I could go over what the context broker is, and we can do some exercises afterwards. Maybe we can do some IoT enabler practicing and do some exercises with that. And maybe we could, I don't know. How many of you are using IoT in your project? Like 5 or 6? Okay. Marcelo touched on a concept that I think is really important, and I'm going to put numbers to it because I think you guys will appreciate it. He showed you a list of enablers that are like a short list of enablers that are kind of like more favored, more mature, more stable, more used by people. And I want to give you a vision of how we from FIWARE like people to use FIWARE. Because there are many enablers, many generic enablers, and there are many specific enablers. There's actually more specific enablers than Marcelo talked about. Fi content is one of the branches of specific enablers. There's Fi star and there's Fi sense or something. There's like 4 or 5 groups of specific enablers that specialize in different, like Fi content is one of the most popular ones because it's more related to content and multimedia. There are many more. But we from FIWARE are looking for you guys to use FIWARE and like to fulfill the vision of FIWARE in a way that makes sense. And this comes to this word. It's not actually a word, but NGSI. This stands for Next Generation Service Interface. How many of you have heard of that word already somewhere? One.
I read the documentation.
Oh, what is that?
I wrote the documentation.
You were in the competition?
No, I read the documentation.
The documentation. Great. The one that the presentation, right? Okay. So you probably know what an NDSI is a little bit. Okay, but I want to explain. I want to tell you how important this is, because this is the heart of FIWARE. This is the core of FIWARE. This is why FIWARE all the enablers, this is how they talk to each other. And this is what we like to see, because there are so many enablers. And the list that Marcelo showed, you saw like different enablers and how are they connected? This is how they work together. So Curento is a stream-oriented enabler, which means that you can process streaming information like video and audio, filtering, and things like that. But it also uses NGSI to communicate with other enablers. Cosmos is a cluster management for Hadoop enabler, but it also uses NGSI to communicate with other enablers. So you can put information in Cosmos very easily using NGSI. You can do situation-based detection with the CP, the complex event processor, which is another enabler called Proton from IBM, using NGSI.
It's kind of an API or something like that. You know,
It's
interface, it's an API.
yes, it's a specification.
Specification of the.
Yeah, it comes from the Open Mobile Alliance,
Okay.
but we in FIWARE we have adapted it, so we kind of call it sometimes the FIWARE and NGSI because we expanded it a little bit, but at the core it's the same as the one from OMA. And it's both a way to represent information and an API that explains how messages are sent and how the data structures are. Yeah. So it's both things. It's both an API and a data model. So once you understand how important NGSI is, I can tell you that we love applications that use NGSI to use several enablers and connect them. And these are the ones that we love. If you have questions, please throw something at me. And by the way, since I'm not looking at the streaming screen, if there's any question in the streaming,
Yeah.
you guys can. There's actually like a 10-second difference.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah, so if you guys see the question, you can help me out with that. And then another thing I want to cover the Cosmos thing. Yeah, I wanted to say something more about that. There's something called Cygnus. This is not an enabler. It's not in the catalog, but it's really important if you want to use Cosmos with the rest of FIWARE. Because it's an adapter for NGSI to persist information on Cosmos, on MySQL, on short-term historic. They're working on one for MongoDB. So if you want to do storing from NGSI information, you're probably interested in Cygnus, which is not an enabler, but it's a software package that's developed by Telefonica and still very useful. Okay. Now, what we could do is we could go over the context broker and then do some exercises. How do you like that?
Yeah.
That'll be fine. Explain what the context broker is really quick. I mean, I could go. There's like 80 slides or something, and there's like one for the basic features and then one for the advanced features. I could cover them if you want, or I could go over the basics and then do some exercises, which is maybe more interesting for you guys. What do you think? Maybe I should just start and then see how it goes. Okay. I need to go with this. Okay. So this is a little index of what we're gonna see in the basic presentation. Now, do you all have the access to this presentation?
Afterwards.
I can give you the link. It's really easy. It's a really easy link. This is the link, bit.ly FIWARE-Orion. And then there's another link for the exercises, and there's another link for the VirtualBox image, which is the same that's in there on the blackboard, which we may be able to use in the exercises.
Is this screen showing on the...
On the screencast?
Yeah.
Yes, it should.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, let's dive into this. So, context management. What is context management? What is context information that we care about it to manage it? Context information is anything that our application is going to process about the environment. It could be a physical environment, like a bus stop. It could be a software environment. It could be a virtual environment. It could be anything. Okay, this is a very low-level, generic thing. And this is information that our application cares about. Okay, we're going to see how NGSI ties with all this concept of context information. But basically, we have things, entities, we call them, that have attributes. So entities like a bus, a citizen, a shop. Again, if you have any questions, just raise your hand or raise up your voice or whatever. More examples of entities. The user could be an entity. This context information model allows you to abstract from the sources of information. So if your application is using information from sensors, you may be able to serve that information without caring about what the source of information is. So this is an example. If you're interested in temperature in a certain area, you don't care where you got that information from. You can still get it. This is an abstraction provided by this context information model. This is the same abstraction provides this separation of information, that you can get information from one system and get other information about the same entity from another system. So the information about the bus may come from different places.
You said a non-inclusive approach, what do you mean?
When I say what, sorry?
When you mean a non-inclusive approach, you mean that this doesn't affect the... What do you mean with that?
An unintrusive
approach is required.
This means that the way you collect your information, the way you provide driver and location should not need to be modified. So at the end, you're going to manage that information in this system, but you shouldn't have to change your software on how you manage that information in system B or system A.
Okay.
Good question. So this is where the NGSI API comes in. The NGSI API is the model of this context information, and the model of the API, the way you send this information back and forth between different entities. And it's just, how many of you are familiar with HTTP protocol? Do you know what HTTP GET is? Okay. Well, basically, for those of you that don't know, is what you do with a browser. When you type an address in the address bar, you're doing an HTTP GET to a server, a web server somewhere, telling it, I need this resource. And the way you say this is you type this line, which is http:// blah, blah, blah. And that is doing an HTTP GET. Okay? So it's getting information from a web server. And the NGSI API works the same. It's not a web server, but it's an HTTP interface that can manage HTTP requests. So it's like get, put, post, delete. So it kind of works like REST architectures. It's not pure REST. I get that question a lot. This is not REST. Okay? It's not pure REST. It's REST-like. And there are two variations of the API. One is more REST, and the other is more remote procedure call, or RPC. We'll go over those. This is what we're going to do with this introduction. We'll go over these operations that we can do with this managed information, context information management. Okay, good so far? Good. I mean, they're a really good teacher or a really bad one. So this is basically saying the same thing. Nothing new. Thank you. That's what I was saying. It's RESTful API to manage information with the context broker. The context broker is the entity that will be getting all this information and giving to all the interested parties and managing it. That's what it's called, a context broker. Broker means just manager in this context. So this is how we are going to model information. We're going to have entities and we're going to have attributes associated with those entities. Just like the bus has a driver license, flower plant has a humidity, temperature. Everything's going to be an entity with attributes. So if in your application you can model information as entities with attributes, then you can take advantage of NGSI. Then you can use the Orion context broker with NGSI and use everything around it. You can persist information through signals on Cosmos or MySQL. You can use Curento to detect. It has like crowd detection of features where you can generate NGSI messages. Anything in FIWARE that works with NGSI you can make use of. Only if your application is able to be modeled as entity and attributes.
The entity is a sensor, for example, or could be just data. For example, in our case, it's students, could be an entity, but they are coming from, the information is coming from different sources. So the entity is the source, is the student, is both. Or is the student,
that
the
depends.
attribute is the source?
The level the level, whether it's higher or lower level, on how you implement the data with entities, it's up to you. So an entity could be a student, and the attributes could be anything about the student.
Where it's coming from,
Or
the source of the data.
Or an entity could be a class, and an attribute could be a student.
Okay. So it's
I mean, it's very, very
flexible.
flexible. But it really affects on how you do this. It really affects on what you can do afterwards. There are many things you can do with attributes and entities, and metadata, which is something associated with an attribute, and that is also. So it depends. But basically, it's anything you can model with this, you're good. Now there are some cases which I would advise against using NGSI. And I've had startups come and say, I want to use FIWARE, show me how I can do it. And I have to say, no, you can't, because it doesn't make sense. And there's an example of, maybe you have a web page where you want to hang some videos. And I have to say, well, I don't see how you want, you need YouTube and you need WordPress. That's it. But if you have an application, maybe if you're using some kind of data persistence that can be modeled after this, then that's probably good. If you only need a database, I would say the context broker is not a good substitute for a database, because a database like MongoDB or MySQL or any other is much more able to. The query protocol is much more rich. Okay, you can query a lot of information with NGSI API, but it's not as powerful as a SQL sentence, for example. It's not as powerful as that, and it's not intended to be like that. And this is to provide abstraction of information, so that you don't care where it's coming from, and then it's able to be used by other parts of the application using NGSI. So I would say it's like a database on steroids. But it's not to be used as a database. Does it make sense? So if you don't want to store information about students and that's it,
Yeah,
you probably need a database for that.
of course. So if you need that this database with storage, why is it with storage? Because it's really fast. You say that it's not. Maybe it's
Because all the other features of the context broker, which I haven't gone into yet.
it's just
But, yeah.
collecting data and then you have to store
Yeah,
it.
because so far I've only said that this is to collect data in this form,
Okay.
and that's the only difference I've said so far is that this is the way you store the data. So you don't yet see how this storing information this way is helpful in a way.
So I guess that is to avoid bottlenecks.
No, it's not a performance.
Maybe to
It's not
avoid
performance-wise.
bottlenecks, if you're receiving data from many places, maybe this is just.
Yeah, there are ways to do that, yeah.
To avoid the bottlenecks,
Mhm.
you go faster and then you have to stay in the place.
Yeah, there are ways to use the context broker like that. But at the end, it's not going to be faster than having MongoDB shard. Okay? It's not intended to be a data store. It's actually why we have Cygnus, so that you can get all the information in the context broker and store it wherever you want. So, but good question. Keep them coming. And also we support JSON and we support XML so far, but it's going to be deprecated. I don't think you are very worried about that because everyone loves JSON. I do too. And then the one up there is very technical difference, but the context broker serves, you may have seen the context broker twice in the catalog. And you may have seen it as the published subscribe context broker and also the configuration management context broker. And that's the two sides of it. Or maybe they removed the second one. I don't remember. But the software still works like that. And that means that you can do two things with the context broker. You can manage the information itself, or you can manage the availability of information. That means that, for example, a bus, let's bring it down. I have a bus with speed, location, occupancy, and driver. These are my 4 attributes that I'm storing in my context broker. That's working as context management. But if I have an entity that's a bus, and these attributes are not storing information, but are telling me, this is where you find the information. This is where you find the driver license or the license plate, and this is where you find the occupancy. So it's telling you where the information is available, then you're dealing with information availability management. It's a very kind of like narrow difference, but is that clear? Like most of the time, you're going to be dealing with the information itself, not the where the information is. But you could have scenarios where you have 2 context brokers, and one is dealing with all the clients asking for information, and this context broker is forwarding the requests where the actual information is to some other context broker, maybe in some other city. That's an example. But for the most part, you're going to be caring about the first context management stuff, and that's the one we'll be doing the exercises on, and on all the examples that I'll be showing. This is the context broker. If you're familiar with the concept of a web server, this is like a web server. So it's listening for HTTP incoming requests, and those could be updates or queries. So basically it's saying, context broker, this is the information you need to store, or context broker, tell me this information. Or the other way that you can work with this is through subscription. You can tell it, I want to subscribe to this information and get notified whenever something happens. And those are the notifications that come out. So it's not like a pure server in the sense of only waiting for you to do something. It's actually being active, notifying things. And by the way, this DB here is actually MongoDB instance that's storing the information. Now, context broker is geared towards vision of real time. That means that my entities with attributes, I'm only going to give you a vision of what's happening right now. I'm not going to give you a vision of how it's evolved. So I know the bus, I know the position right now, I know where it's come from, I know the path it's taken by only looking at the context broker. Because the context broker it's only caring about the information right now. Okay, this is an important distinction. Of course, you can tell the context broker, you can connect it through signals, and what you do is you tell signals, hey, subscribe to the position of the bus, and whenever there's a change, notify me. So the context broker will see the bus moving, and send notification to signals, and signals will be maybe storing in Cosmos, in web HDFS. So then afterwards you can do a query to Cosmos and see the path. Maybe draw it on our web screen. Okay? And only by updating this information on the context broker, you get all that for free. And of course configure this to get notified whenever there's a change. So far, so good. Maybe right now you are taking all this and thinking, okay, how could this apply to my situation? If you have questions, specific questions, maybe about your application, then you can just register.
How does the content broker notify the consumers?
How does
It uses sockets or web sockets?
Yeah. Right now it's using basic HTTP over TCP messages. WebSockets is something that's on the pipeline. It's not, I mean, it's in the roadmap, but it's not available yet.
Some program about
Yeah, well actually you need to have an HTTP endpoint to be able to send notifications. So yeah, you may have problems if your clients that are being notified are behind a firewall or behind a private network. You may have problems with that. There are different things you can do to solve that problem. There are many things you can do. There's actually one of the startups in the previous call, an Impact, has developed a solution for that. The company name is Bastly, B-A-S-T-L-Y. Bastly. They have developed, like, their product is this software that takes notification from the context broker and sends it to a cell phone, for example, which is a private network. It's not easy to reach. So that's what they provide. That's one example of something you can do, but if you want to play with it, then there are things like ng-rock that you can use, or there are many things. Okay, good. So this is how it looks talking to the context broker. This is a simple HTTP GET operation that's asking the context broker, what's your version? Okay, with the slash version. That's asking the context broker what version, and that's what you get. And you can actually go ahead and try it, because I can give you an open context broker endpoint. It's begin.com, and then the port is 1026, which is the default port for the context broker, and then slash version. And any operation I'm showing you can try it and see how it works. You can even write that on your browser, and you see something. By default is in XML, because I'm not updating to the latest version, but I believe the latest version, the .24, is defaulting to JSON. Is it working? Can I see it? Mm-hmm. Good. No demo effect so far. Okay. More examples of operations you can do. By the way, there are many things in that context broker and that endpoint that I gave you. There are entities already in there. I don't care if you delete them. And maybe the things that you are able to do with a browser are limited to get operations, but if you have a REST client or like, I don't know the name, but there are many ways to try this, no? So you can create entities like with posts, update entities, delete them, get information, and you just go / context entities / and then the ID of the entity. You can do the same for attributes with / attributes and the name of the attribute. You can work on specific attributes of the entity. And by the way, I don't think it's here, but if you do get v1 / context entities without entity ID, then you get a list of all the entities, which is something that you can do right now and see all the entities that I have. I think I have things written in German and things like that. People create silly things in that, but you can see them.
This has to be calls from the providers.
What's that?
For example, in this case, these are calls made from the bus. I mean, the example that you use are calls that are activated by the application that is in the bus.
Okay.
I'm doing the calls and
If the get operation, for example, with the bus example, would be the actor that's interested in knowing the bus position. So it could be my cell phone. I want to know where the bus is. Doing a get. The bus itself may be updating its information, its location information to the context broker. So it may be doing a put.
why is the context broker that is the context broker? Or is the bus who is putting
So
the data?
the bus is doing a put. So it's updating its data.
Yeah.
And me as a client interested in information is doing a get.
Okay, understood.
Okay. Good. And this is the attributes. The same. If you do attributes with no attribute name, then you get all the attributes, which you also get if you do the entity ID. And then this is a particular example. This is not a bus. This is a car, an expertly drawn car. I should say, which is updating information about speed. And then there's a client, which is a cell phone, an expertly drawn cell phone that's querying information about the speed. Maybe drawing it on a very beautifully drawn widget on your application. This is for concerned fathers that have children with power. Yes, application. So this is the basic flow. The car updates information and the client obtains information. This is not very exciting, but it works. You can get information. You don't know if the car is going 200 miles an hour or kilometers an hour, but you can get information as you're asking it. You can get it. And this is how it looks like. Yes.
What is the usual latency on 1900?
Well, that depends on the
Production
network.
requirements was expected.
There is about, if you're using only one context broker with enough RAM, which is about 1 gig or 2 gigs, and you have a good, the connection is not the issue, then you have around 2,000 operations per second with only one. But there are many ways to scale that up. There are many ways. You can federate context broker. You can delegate on other context providers of the information. There are many ways to do it if you need more than that. So this is how the operations look at. Because your question is, what if I have 2,000 people asking for the speed of the car, and you have to query for this information. Each one of them is going to query for like every second or something. It gets crazy really fast. So this is a JSON. How many of you know what a JSON is? A JSON document. Good. This is JSON. This is how you write in JSON what an NGSI object is. So in this particular case, this NGSI object is a car with only one attribute, which is speed. Now this looks kind of funny. I want to tell you something. This is if you see the URL at the top, you see the V1 context entities. This is the first version of the protocol. We are developing the second version at the moment. It's going to be ready pretty soon, and it's easier looking than this. I mean, did somebody say something? I just want to show you really quick how a car would look like. So it would be something like that. Now if you compare this to this, all this, it's kind of different. I mean, well, I omitted the type, but you can put the type in here too. So this is the simplest form. But this is on the this has been developed. Actually, the 0.24 version of the context broker supports both V1 and V2. You can already play with it. But in this presentation, I will be showing you the V2 version.
One thing,
Just one
syntax is very familiar to whether you know API framework that we're using. We are using an API that is called extended API. We know that. Well, it's the thing that we have used for the educational industry sector. It's the standard that we are using. So we have to use exactly this standard in this format, or can we use a format that is slightly different?
Well,
using JSON.
If you send a JSON document that the context broker does not understand, then you get an error.
Yeah.
Even if it's JSON. I mean, JSON is the language and where you tell the message.
No, but we are using JSON. Maybe the syntax is pretty similar. I mean, I think that it's the same. But this case, the standard is called extended API, JSON for education.
Maybe it's really easy to adapt for.
And it's really what we have, but we receive the data with this syntax, this format.
Well, then you have to keep in mind that it's not only the format of the message, but also the endpoint where you send the message.
Yeah, of course. But this is on the process.
Good.
Okay, sorry, when you were writing back, I have a question because I have my thing here on Skype looking into the streaming. Are you streaming a camera or are you streaming?
I'm streaming my screen.
Your screen, all right? Because they're like wondering because you're going back and forth between the screens.
No, I was just changing the window.
Were
they able to see what I wrote?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you change it so they never like saw it completely. And they were asking me, are you defining the entities not the same way as you have it there?
Well, that was an example of the V2, the version 2 of the API. I mean, it's just mentioning it. It's not.
Are we going to be able to
So there are different ways to do everything in version 2.
Are we going to be able to use the version 2?
Yes.
Or is it going to be later?
You are able to use it, but you have no promise that it won't change, because it's changing every day. But it's available in software already. But I'm going to be showing you V1 because it's the one that you can already use and it's stable and it works with everything else. Version 2 is being developed inside the context broker. So whenever it's ready, all the other enablers in FIWARE will catch up. Okay, so it's not really ready for anything, only to play around with it. So I just wanted to show you how it looks like, which is really a lot simpler. And that over there is the response, which is an echo saying everything's okay. And this is an update of the car. This means that this is the car sending this. So the car is sending this value saying, this is my new speed right now. To which the context broker answers okay. And this is a client asking for this information for the speed of the car with another get and getting the speed here. Okay, so this is the flow, how it actually looks like in JSON form and HTTP messages. Yeah, I already said that. Yes.
Is the history of value retained and purged?
No. You only get real-time information. So you only get the last value in the system. If you want historical information, you need to use a connector, Cygnus, that subscribes to the speed of the car in this case, and gets notified whenever there's a change. So this message is, you don't have to do anything, this message is sent here and then persisted somewhere. Could be custom. Could be a cluster. But context broker is about real time. It's about the latest picture of the state of the location. This is another get of the speed, just to show you how you get the new value whenever you do get afterwards. Now we create with post to create. We create a room with two attributes, temperature and pressure. And this is an update of the two values at the same time. This is just to show you how you can, if you remember with the car, in the URL we were specifying the car ID attribute and the attribute ID, which was speed, and then just placing the value inside of the payload. And that's a really fast way of doing it. I'll show you. So you have the URL specifying the actual attribute you want to update and then the value. In this case, we are updating two attributes at the same time. So we are in the URL you will find the entity ID and then the two values in the payload. So this is what I was saying before, that there are two approaches: the REST-like approach and the RPC approach. This would be more the RPC approach, where you put a URL and everything in the payload and everything you want to have happen. Okay. Then you do a get, and you receive the temperature of the room. Simple. And then you can do a get to the entity and get everything there is about the entity, which in this case is two attributes. This is a creation of a new entity, which is another room with another two attributes. Keep in mind that the type of the attributes, the context broker does not care about the type. So if you say it's an integer and then in value you say ABC, there's no error. So something that's manually done by the user of the context broker. So we're creating another room, okay? And then we can query and use patterns to ask for all the rooms, which we do using the isPattern field to true and using the dot star, which is the regular expression. It means everything that starts with room. So we have room 1 and room 2, and the answer will be all the information about room 1 and room 2. Well, actually not all the information, because we are also saying in our request that the attribute we are interested in is temperature. So we're getting all the entities that start with room and only their temperature. This is the powerful query feature of the context broker. It's not as powerful as a database or like a SQL, but it's powerful enough for many cases. This is another way of using the context broker, which is notifications, which I have explained how it works. Somebody subscribes and somebody receives a notification. It could be the same. Okay, these two icons, which look different in there, they could be the same. In the Cygnus example, Cygnus would be the application subscribing, and also the consumer application, because I'm subscribing to changes and receiving the changes to do something different. Okay, but That's I differentiate that, but they could be the same. So this is how it looks like. You do a subscribe context, a post to subscribe context, and tell the broker, I'm interested in room 1 and this down here. This is the condition of the notification. Whenever there's a change on temperature, I want to get a notification. Now, you see there's attributes temperature here. This means that the notification will contain this. And this is the condition of the notification. So if you have two values like pressure and temperature, you may be interested in knowing the temperature or looking for temperature, but informing about the pressure. In this case, you are observing temperature and reporting temperature as well.
Then the one question about how to use a general content broker. Imagine a situation where what we need is not just the real-time data right now. So we just collect a lot of data and then analyze the historical data that are collected. Should I use a content broker in this situation? That I need, of course, I need to collect a lot of data from many places, and then instead of just from the other side to find out what is the current value of this information that was collected, just to analyze all the data that was collected and stored in the history of the.
Well, I would say that the storing and analyzing of information is not what the Orion context broker is good at. I mean, you can connect it to this and do that.
But it's worth it. Right?
But it's good if you are gathering information from different sources and you're using the common language for your data to be analyzed later.
No, but what I mean is that maybe if you have a layer in the middle, maybe it's not worth it. Just collecting the data in Cosmos or wherever. What is the value that can I get from
I would say that depends on where you get information from. Are you getting your events from other software?
From other platforms, from other 11 platforms everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
These platforms are sending data out of the students every time that there is an event.
So you already have all this data funneled into somewhere where you can analyze it.
Yes, we have a database.
And you borrow that?
But at the same time, what we have is all these platforms everywhere in the world that sending data every time.
And then you analyze it
And
afterwards.
then we store it, and then afterwards we analyze this data, and then we visualize on the sites.
I would say it doesn't make sense. I would say because when you have a very specific source of information that you have already not controlling, but it's stable enough for your application, and you already have it somewhere where you can analyze it,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't. I mean, there are some other features of the context broker that you may be interested in.
Yeah.
That could make it interesting in your case. Maybe geolocation, or maybe, I don't know. Okay. Oh, and by the way, this is the HTTP endpoint where the information will be sent. This is what we were talking before, that this needs to be accessible.
That's our service.
So you cannot send a notification directly to your cell phone using this, because the cell phone is not accessible like that, unless you make it so. And then the throttling means I only want to get a notification every 5 seconds, not more often than that. And the duration means for how long I want to be subscribed to this value. You can also use patterns, which I don't think there's an example in the slides, but you can also use patterns to subscribe to all the entities or all the entities that start with room. And so I've seen like a hacker do a chat application with the context broker using subscriptions. Because every entity was a room, and there was a new attribute for every line of the conversation, and everyone in the room was subscribed to the room, and you would subscribe to the specific room with this operation and get a notification whenever there's a new attribute. which is a new line, somebody type a new line, and you get it in your window. It's kind of crazy things you can do with this. Okay, so I'm not giving you much of a vision of what you can do with this. Well, actually, I'm actually doing this right now. But I'm not telling you like use cases because this is very generic. But whenever you think of something you can do with this, there's like infinite possibilities. Maybe it's not good for storing, but maybe you can store it and maybe do something with it, like with geolocation. I don't know. There are many things you can do. And by the way, all the chat rooms were at the same time. Cygnus was, because this was the Cygnus developer doing this. Cygnus was subscribed to the chat, and we could, if you connected to the chat room, whenever there was a conversation going beforehand, then it would connect to Cosmos and retrieve the whole conversation, and you could see the historical changes of all the conversation in your screen. So it's really cool. So now we're subscribed to the temperature of the room. There's a change in temperature, and there is a notification sent to the URL up there that we specified, and the temperature is here. So this is how the notification looks like. Okay. So this is NGSI 10 is not, or I wanted to make it clear, it's not a version of FNGSI. NGSI has several compartments, of which we care about NGSI 10 and NGSI 9. Remember a few slides ago where I said you can deal with context management and context availability management? Well, the context management is done by NGSI 10 and context availability management is done by NGSI 9, which is a different set of commands or requests with different JSON syntax, but it's very similar. And then NGSI 10 is what we've been seeing in these past few slides. Updating information, querying for information. And then standard operation is defined as the RPC approach to NGSI, which is everything's in the payload, everything's in the JSON. Like in the JSON there's a pattern with give me all the rooms, or give me room 1, everything's in the payload. And what we've seen also is that you can also specify on the URL, which is a more REST-like approach, and we call that the convenience operations. I don't think we mentioned in this. Okay, there you go. The convenience operations. But there are two ways of doing the same thing with the context worker. Okay, so there's not really a functional difference. How can you get the Orion context broker? You can, if you have a FIWARE Lab account, there is an image that has a CentOS machine with the context broker, Cygnus, and something else installed already. And you can also download it from here, which is the one that I was writing here as well. This is the password for the machine. And update it once you have it, because it probably has 4 or 5 versions behind the current one. Docker containers. How many of you know or have Docker available? 3? And you're all using Mac. Good for you. Do you have Docker in your machine?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because this is like the easiest way to have it run in like 10 seconds. Did I see a hand? Yeah, there's a Docker Compose that just deploys a MongoDB and a context broker, because you need the MongoDB for it to work, and then it just runs. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and show you, because this is cool stuff. Do I have? Yes. There it is. So I have this file where I'm saying that I need a MongoDB image, this version in particular, and I want this image, which is FIWARE Orion, which is linked to Mongo and exposes port 1026. And I go docker compose up. For the first time you do this, you have to download the images, which I have already. And then once you have this, you can try it like curl localhost 10.6, and it's working, and it's running. Everything is running on my machine. So this is another way to deploy it. It's my favorite way to deploy it actually, because it's so simple and everything is running. And I'm running Ubuntu, and actually Linux Mint, but it's based on Ubuntu. And the context program is supported only on CentOS, but this way is really easy to have it running. It does not compile on Mac OS, as far as I know, but it compiles on other Linuxes with a bit of work. In Ubuntu, it works with minimal changes. But I still like it this way. So you probably need to get a context broker for the exercises to be done. So either Docker or the virtual machine or the image in the FIWARE lab, or you could even use this one, which is not in the slides obviously, but you can use this one if you want.
What's the technology used to be Cosmos?
The technology? Like the programming language? Java. And also for Cygnus. The context broker is developed with C++. The story with Cygnus is there was a team in Telefonica Research and Development that was developing this, which is cluster management for Hadoop software, and they intended it to be part of OpenStack. But somebody else was faster than Telefonica and came up with their own solution, and OpenStack adopted it, which is called Savannah, I believe. So now what they're doing is Cosmos is actually Savannah, which is the Hadoop cluster management software that runs on top of OpenStack. And Cygnus is adapted to that. So Cygnus is the connector that really adds value from FIWARE, because this is mostly OpenStack. Okay. And there's an instance running on the FIWARE lab that you can play with. But if you want to deploy your own instance of Cosmos, then you probably you should know that you'll be dealing with OpenStack installation. Okay. So have you chosen your way of running the context broker? More good stuff. This web page, this is a web app that you can connect to a context broker and actually manage entities and attributes using a web interface. So you don't have to type curl commands or using the web browser. You can actually push a button and create an entity with this. This is not FIWARE official. This is a guy in Brazil that developed it, and it's really cool. And also there are a few goodies for the context broker that you can have it integrated in other systems like Backbone, using this software. There's also CartoDB connector that you can take all the entities that have geolocation and draw them in a map, like for free. You only tell CartoDB, this is my context broker, draw my entities, and then you get all your entities in the map. I have to do nothing. So it's really cool. And also, yeah.
You mentioned that you use MongoDB for this. Is there any implementation with MySQL or use another database?
No. So for the context broker to work, you have to have MongoDB. So if maybe in your application you are using MongoDB, then you can use the same MongoDB. If not, then you need one MongoDB for the context broker and then whatever else you're using. And then there's another application, the FIWARE web app, which draws widgets, and you can also connect it to the context broker and create a widget for an entity, and it draws different kinds of widgets like maps. Everything you see there. It's really cool to try it. I mean, if you go to the web page and create an account and say, use this endpoint like leandrovien.com, and tell the create a widget for room 1, just like in 2 minutes you can have this working like this, really easy. So what I'm trying to say here is that there's a community already that's creating things around the context broker, creating connectors for their own things. There are even people like what I was mentioning before in the previous open code of impact that are creating things that are open source for everyone to use around the context broker and around NGSI, which is what the context broker does. And who knows, maybe creating an enabler in the future. And these are some references, like where to find the catalog entry, where to find the slides, which there's a shorter URL, which is this one. Yeah, I showed this before. And also Stack Overflow. This is what we do with support. Okay. If you have a question about the context broker or FIWARE, we have tags. We have the FIWARE tag and the FIWARE-Orion tag, which is the one I'm subscribed to. And you can ask questions like, how do I do this thing with the context broker? This is where you go. And there's also the ask.fiware.org, the Q&A site, which you should use that one for non-technical questions, like more like FIWARE, European Commission questions, like the program itself. I don't know, there are many things in there already. But if you have a question about JSON, a message, an HTTP something, like the server is not working because of that, this is the place. Stack Overflow. And if you have, also, if you have problems with the FIWARE lab, this is not the place, Stack Overflow. Like, I don't get my IP or my machine isn't running, Stack Overflow is not the place, because this is for questions that other people may benefit from, but people may not benefit from you asking why I don't have my IP. So you go to FIWARE lab help making this. That's where you get help on FIWARE lab problems. And also, if you have requests for features or bugs that you have discovered a bug, you go to GitHub. Okay. GitHub is where we do our work. And there are people already, like the other day, there was this guy from Telefonica and he was saying, this is the first time in Telefonica's history where we've done a open source software where we have people from outside of Telefonica fighting bugs and commenting and providing changes. So they were really excited. Like this software is coming mainly from Telefonica. Most of the team are from Telefonica, except for me. So references and support and everything, it's in here, and that's it. So yeah, this is what I have for now. So we can stretch a little bit and come in 5 minutes and actually do something.